Hi, family. Welcome to episode 30 of my enrolled agent career. I'm ecstatic, if you can't tell, to have reached episode 30 because when I launched the Tax Relief with Timalyn Bowens podcast, I didn't realize how many podcasts actually fail. Being consistent and showing up every week is it's a bit of work, but I'm thankful for you all as listeners who hop on every Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern to tune in and check out the stories of the enrolled agents that get on here with me. I appreciate you and all of your feedback and your remarks because it makes it that much more enjoyable to do. So, thank you so much to the Spotify listeners and to those of you who are now with us on the new YouTube home, the Enrolled Agent Hub. I'm sorry. If you're new here, I'm your host, Timalyn Bowens, and I'm America's favorite EA. And I'm also the owner of Bowens Tax Solutions, which is a virtual firm based in Louisville, Kentucky. And I started this podcast because when I was starting my journey, there really wasn't anybody out there talking about being an enrolled agent or sharing what it was like to hit your first income goal, how you go find representation clients. So, this podcast gives me the opportunity to talk to other enrolled agents so they can share their stories and experiences. So, hopefully, you'll not only be inspired, but also get to miss some of the hiccups and bumps that we hit as well. So, in today's episode, I have our first guest since we've been back from break. So I met this enrolled agent. Um, it was via LinkedIn. I want to say that we connected either December or January. And I remember it was very cold and my furnace went out when we first connected. But during our conversation, as he was sharing his story with me, I picked up on the fact that he was interested in connecting with other enrolled agents with the intent to help. So that is why I wanted to bring him on to the podcast so he could share his experience with you as well, because I think there will be different nuggets and gems that you'll pick up that can help you along the way as well. This person has been around the tax representation space for a long time. He actually started working in tax representation right out of college and then found his way working in the mortgage industry before, of course, coming back to the dark side with tax representation. He's been an enrolled agent for about 20 years. He is the owner of Rockwater, which is an EA firm that does do tax compliance but has a focus on tax representation, which you all know I'm a fan of because I believe all enrolled agents should do tax representation, right? So, tonight, with no further ado, I want to bring our guest in from Denver, Colorado, Mr. Mike Christoff. Hi, Mike. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you very much, Timalyn. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the work you do, and I know how valuable it is for other enrolled agents. So I'm really honored to be here. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. I remember, I think our first interaction on LinkedIn, I had written an article. I want to, maybe it was about creating a client avatar.
Uh-huh.
And if you're listening and you're on LinkedIn, if you know, you know, there will be people that like posts and then slide in your DMs and it's like, what does this person want? But I could tell that you had actually taken a look at the article. You didn't scan it with AI and then come to say, hey, I want to talk to you about this. So it's one of those DMs that I'm glad that I didn't just like brush over and actually engage so we could connect.
Yeah, no, yeah, I did, and I did some research into the work that you were doing, and it just, I really
So whenever guests come on The first question that I always ask them is, how did you find out about the enrolled agent designation and what made you decide to sit for the exam?
Yeah, sure. 1998. And that was a really interesting time in the representation world because the IRS had, Congress had just passed a restructuring act in 1998. And what that act did is it changed and enabled a lot of the kind of administrative representation, like collection due process appeals, kind of didn't exist before that. And it laid a lot of the groundwork for a lot of the resolutions and specifically kind of administrative resolutions. So representation at that time was very much in its kind of infancy,
Mm-hmm.
and was very unique. And there really weren't many firms out there, and really a lot of individuals that specialize in it. And I think that that's still true today. Is the truth of it. I mean, when you look at it, there are not a lot of lawyers that do a lot of the representation work that we do because it's primarily administrative. There are certainly CPAs and EAs that are licensed to do it, and some don't enjoy it and don't want to do it. And so it still remains, in my opinion, kind of a niche, but it was an exciting time and kind of a growing firm. But I had some family that was in the mortgage industry, and so I had an opportunity there and wanted to take advantage of that. And so I had a lot of success there. I was a mortgage broker. I was a loan officer. I had kind of grown a network and owned a mortgage company for a period of time. And then in 2008, when the mortgage industry meltdown happened, it really eliminated. You really couldn't broker loans anymore. What had appealed to me about originating mortgages was um, kind of solving problems, like doing financial analysis, understanding what loan programs were out there, understanding underwriting, understanding my client, trying to match them with kind of the best program. And all of those programs went away. And so, if I was going to remain in that industry, it was going to require that I went to work for basically a large bank. And I had those opportunities, but I just, working for, a large, like, I don't want to work for a large company like that with all the, kind of the bureaucracy involved. And so, the representation was still, kind of booming. The company I'd worked for was expanding. I had connections there, and so I went back to work for that company. And when I started looking at what the work was like for enrolled agents, it's actually, in terms of representation, it's really similar to being a loan officer or underwriting for mortgages. In representation, you've got a government form, a 433A or a 433B, a financial statement. With mortgages, there's a federal form. It's called a 1003, and that's a loan application. And you complete the application. You've got loan programs, which are similar to resolutions. You've got underwriters, which are like revenue officers or appeals officers. And so it was pretty similar work. And so I wanted to get licensed and represent clients and be responsible for the outcomes and make sure I took care of them. So I got my license just about, I guess.
Cool. So I kind of chuckled to myself because I am younger than you. So this is not to make you feel older. Some of the things that I'm asked when I refer to different time periods in the United States or within
Yeah,
different industries, I'm at that point now in my life where people are like, huh, what are you talking about? And then I see their
yeah.
birth date and I'm like, oh, wow, you don't know what I'm talking about. So we have listeners who are like college freshmen to
Hmm.
60s and wanting to do something on the side. For those people who may not be old enough to know, Can you
Yes.
explain what happened in 2008? I remember it.
Yeah, absolutely. My wife is a university teacher, and I have the opportunity to speak to some of her students. And I actually will bring up that, kind of the mortgage meltdown. And I've had to
Mhm.
change how much I explain about it as the years have gone. I've spoken to our students, so yeah, I absolutely understand, Timalyn. So in 2008, essentially, um, a situation came to a head where you had a huge number of mortgages in the United States that have been originated with rules that were not very strict. And so there was an enormous amount of mortgages that defaulted to the point where it put huge banks out of business. And so it completely collapsed, not just the mortgage industry, but the housing market as well. And so it was actually a very scary financial time for a lot of industries in the country.
Thank you. Because, yeah, I chuckled to myself because I was like, there are people listening who have no
Yeah,
idea what he's referring
yeah,
to. But I think that it's cool that you brought up the comparison between being in that industry and tax representation with the form. Because I have a lot of people reach out who will say, I think I'm interested in doing this, but I don't know because I don't have a tax specific background.
yeah.
For those people, what kind of, I guess, advice would you give to them from switching industries like that?
I I will never fall in love with tax. I can tell you that. I don't even do my own tax return. Okay. And I remember when I was sitting for the EA exam. It's all about preparing tax returns was kind of my assessment. And I remember thinking I'm never going to use this. Like this isn't what I want to do at all. And so I wouldn't let a fear of tax take you away from the profession at all. And I don't think that most people realize how many doors NEA designation can really open up for you that are not related to tax. That's one of them, for sure. It can open up representation, leadership. I mean, I've been in leadership roles in this. I've been in ownership roles. I've been in technology roles in it. So there's really a lot you can do with an EA credential.
Yeah, and
Once you finish explaining to all your friends and family what an EA is, of course.
I right. But I 200% agree, and I'm glad that you brought up that point because I will have people who, on the other hand, they love taxes, doing tax prep, and they're like, I should become an EA. And I'm like,
Yeah.
for what? Do you just want the letters behind your name, or are you going to be intentional with it? And I think
Hmm.
even within our profession, our license comes through the IRS. NAEA has labeled us as America's tax experts. Representation and tax preparation are two completely different worlds.
Uh-huh. Yes.
And, you know, I would agree with what you said as well. The exam prepares you and tests you on your own knowledge as far as actually preparing returns, but not actually doing the representation work.
Hmm.
For you, you had that experience pre early 2000s with working in tax representation, but for people who are like, okay, I know how to do a 1040, how do I learn how to do the rep work? Like, what did that look like for
Hmm.
you once you came back?
So I was fortunate enough. I mean, I worked in a company where I had a lot of like mentors, and people that could train me, and it allowed me to just kind of start submitting powers of attorney, and I had people I could ask questions of, and could kind of help out as I needed, and I think a lot of it, Timlin, honestly, is confidence is part of it. I mean, obviously, you need the technical kind of experience. But I think a lot of it is just the confidence, right? And you gain that by doing it. And I think that you gain confidence also by having good people around you that can help, mentor you and provide training. And nowadays, I mean, there's just great training out there as well to help with that.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to give a disclaimer to the people who maybe this isn't their first episode and they've been listening since I launched. You all, I did not pay Mike to say that. I think
No,
he's listened to less than 3 episodes, because one of the things I always reiterate, people will say, well, I can't take any clients. Like, I have to take 10 more years of courses or whatever. And I'm like, it's just like riding a bike. Like, you can read about it all day, but until you actually get on there and take off and do it, you're not going to know how to do it. Right.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then
I
you,
mean, 100%. And I work with in fact, I was just at an event last night, and I was talking to an enrolled agent. He's got his own firm, and he does some representation work. And he said, I won't take really complex ones. It's great to kind of have referral partners. And he was talking to me about a client that he was considering referring over, and we kind of talked through it. And I was like, you can handle it. And I'm just happy to kind of share some experience, and honestly, he's on the right path. I mean, it was just more, kind of confirming it. I think giving him the confidence. And so yeah, that's what that looks like. I think for a lot of EAs is finding those folks.
yes, and the community part. And I always tell people, like you said, you were fortunate to have mentors around you. I was fortunate. Some of the best tax minds that I know are CPAs, but like to have CPAs who didn't discredit my credential, right?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Um, who like still spoken to me and like gave me guidance. That makes a world of a difference as well.
Uh-huh.
When we focus on collaboration over competition, and some communities are going to be paid. Some people you're going to pay for access to, and then you have other things that are organic, but it's important to have somebody who's reliable to give you that advice or point you in the right direction or hold your hand when necessary.
Hmm. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It's critical. I mean, the network is so powerful. And I didn't discover that until kind of later in my career. I had had the experience. We were kind of isolated. I worked in kind of a large firm, and we did kind of internal training. And we at that time it was really hard to find good training for representation. I mean, there just wasn't kind of much out there. And so what I would do is just just the online training where you click through everything, and you get, that's how I'd spend my holiday break, was making sure I kind of got through my education for a number of years. And then I ended up the state of Colorado was going to be passing a law. They had proposed a law that was going to kind of inadvertently, but limit the ability of EAs to practice and represent in the state of Colorado. And the Colorado Society of Enrolled Agents was active in lobbying to change that proposed legislation. And so I'd reached out to them just to kind of see, how I could support. And they said I could help, and asked me to be on the board. And so that was kind of the first time that I started networking with other, kind of EAs, and really starting to see the value, and started to do some kind of in-person, training, and really saw just how different, how much better that is. And so that's one thing that I would definitely recommend to EAs is to get in-person, training, go to networking events. I mean, the subject, sometimes the conversations kind of between the sessions are the most important ones, and you learn the most, and you make the best connections at those. That's extremely valuable.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. I think in our kind of popcorn society, everybody's like, oh, I can just get my CE online, which I mean, it's good, it's convenient. I usually get distracted if I'm not in my office, right?
Yeah.
Because nobody can see me. But again, you can't have that conversation with somebody at the vending machine or coming out of the bathroom. Those are really the connections where, like, oh, yeah, I met my mentor going to get a Sprite from the
Yeah.
fridge while we were on break.
Yep.
Um, I love how you brought up with the Colorado Society of Enrolled Agents as well.
Hmm.
I'll have enrolled agents ask me, like, why should I join NAEA? Like, why should I look at the state affiliates or chapters? And yes, they're the only organization really like for specifically for enrolled agents, but
Hmm.
I don't think that people realize how much advocating they do to protect our representation rights.
Right. Right. Yes. A ton. Yes. Yeah.
So I was like, you can get CE anywhere just about now. You can meet cool folks just about anywhere, but this is the only organization that if Kentucky were to pop up, or what
Uh,
we just dealt with in Oregon, any of
hmm.
those places is going to say, no, they have unlimited representation rights under Circular 230 through the IRS, which is
Yes.
something that I can appreciate. And I hope I don't have as close of an experience and appreciation as you did in Colorado.
Yeah, and I can't remember exactly what the law is, but it comes up all the time. I mean, I think this is actually the second go around with Oregon. I remember this happening a few years ago as well, and I think Minnesota just a couple
Yeah.
of years ago as well. The years all kind of blend together for me now, but it does come up pretty frequently. And in the course of working with COSIA as well, I mean, I was on that board for gosh over 10 years, and was uh, treasurer and vice president and president for a period of time, and then I did get involved with national, not as extensively, but
Mhm.
national does the fly-in every year where they fly in enrolled agents to go talk on Washington. It's a great experience. Keeps it kind of front of mind for our legislators what the EA designation is, what we do, and does very much ensure our livelihoods.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Um, so we've talked about it quite a bit already. I'm trying to make sure what point do I want to go to next. With you, I'll say, for lack of better terms, growing up that way in representation, what I have found, and it kind of goes over my head sometimes, and I have to remember. So I came from a traditional accounting background.
Mhm.
I got my accounting degree, took my 150 plus hours, CPA firm 3 years so I could sit for the exam. But with that came structure. So I kind of know like what a firm is supposed to look
Mhm.
like, what communication is supposed to look like. A lot of people that I encounter now, a lot of people may not have that traditional background, or they've never worked in a firm. They're just kind of out here flying solo. For
Yeah.
you, because of the way, again, for lack of better words, you grew up in representation, what was it that made you decide that you wanted to start your own thing?
Um, well, I mean, I had a mortgage company, and so I had a bit of an entrepreneur, kind of itch, I guess you could say. When the meltdown happened, that was financially tough. I will tell you that. And I was not interested in, another firm, or being responsible for payroll, or kind of all of those things. So it was pretty attractive to go work for another firm. But one thing to clarify, Timalyn, is that I'm not the owner of Rockwater. I'm part of a
Oh,
group of folks
sorry.
that no, that's okay. No, no, that helped to kind of start it. And I just it was a great opportunity because it was kind of a small group of us that tended to just have shared vision about how to approach building a company, treating clients, treating employees, how to go about representation, things we wanted to solve. And so, for me, it created a kind of a safer way to kind of go do that, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, for sure. And thank you
Yeah.
for clarifying that.
Yeah.
I want your business partners to think that you came and gave me misinformation. Um,
Yeah.
but I think that's also important to note too, which I'm glad you brought the clarification. A lot of people think that there are no jobs as an enrolled agent and like they have to start their own firm because everybody doesn't want to be the boss. And like you mentioned, I'm looking at health insurance and
Right.
stuff like that now. Like
Yeah.
can somebody else be responsible for this? Um,
Hmm.
with that breakaway, what did that look like though? Because again, being somebody that starts something, it's not having everything on your shoulders, but it's still a different type of responsibility.
Yeah. Um, so any startup is tough, for sure. I think that we did it, in a way that, made it not as tough as it is in some cases. I mean, I think that, there are tons of opportunities for EAs at existing companies, and I think now, with the prevalence of remote work, I mean, it just opens up, that to lots and lots and lots of different options. I know for us, I mean, we're able to recruit all over the country, and it's awesome, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it opens up a huge talent pool. But I would not. I actually think that, I would never say that it's easy to start your own firm. Like that. That's not true. But out of kind of all industries, and when I think about it, I think that being an EA is one of the easier. And I think that if I think what's important is if you understand what kind of problems you want to solve and what kind of people you want to help, it becomes much more straightforward on how to go about doing that.
You're all up in my training notes. It's almost like we both have done this before.
Yeah. Well, and I also think that, I mean, now, because this, in particular, if you want to move into representation, I mean, there are a ton of resources out there now to help you, kind of build a practice. And, there's lots of tools out there for, all the kind of business processes that you can go implement. So I think it's actually easier now than ever, would be my estimation.
Yeah, I would agree with that. When people tell me they don't know where to start, but they want to make a certain amount of money, I say, well, you need to know like who you want to help and how you want to help them. So again, I promise you guys, I'm not paying Mike to say these things. He's just speaking from his own experience too. Yeah, but I agree with you. I think it's easier to kind of figure some of those things out there now because there are resources and people. I think LinkedIn is great for people who have raised their hand to be like, hey, this is how I did it. Even if it is some of them maybe CPAs, tax attorneys, people are more willing to share their journey.
Uh-huh.
Um, again, so you can kind of be like, okay, maybe I shouldn't go down that path, or maybe that's just them and I'm going to try it anyway. With you again having a group of founders, I'm not trying to pit anybody against anybody, so I'm not going to say what the worst thing was.
Yeah.
Or people who are like, you know what, I want to partner with somebody else and they do the marketing and I do the work, or vice versa.
Hmm.
What is a piece of advice that you would say, like, if you're going to partner with somebody, to make sure that you do before you actually like launch that partnership?
Yeah, I gotcha. Well, so I'll draw on not just, kind of, my experiences, but even, in mortgages. I mean, when I had my mortgage company, I was partners with my brother. And of course, I've worked with a lot of small businesses, and worked with a lot of owners. This is going to sound kind of bad, Timlin, but it's like it's a marriage. It is. And um
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that you need a prenuptial agreement, but I think a conversation about, if it doesn't go well, what does it look like? And are we comfortable with having a discussion about what happens if we want to break up? I think that's advice I give to anybody that's going into any kind of a partnership. I think that's important. But I think that the most important thing is ensuring that you have the same objectives in mind, and that you're trying to obtain, you've kind of got the same vision about what you're trying to accomplish. And that could be money. I mean, you could, I think people could look at it and say, there's a certain amount I want to make, and we want to do this together, and that, that could be it. It could be that you want freedom. That could be the objective, is that you want to be self-employed so that you can kind of create freedom for yourself. It could be, I think in our case, we had really strong feelings about kind of the representation industry. Timalyn is the truth of it, and really just a real passion about um, building a company where you do it the right way with transparency, integrity, and taking care of clients and kind of taking care of employees. And that was just kind of the guiding light. And everybody just kind of agreed that that's what we wanted to go accomplish, and made a big difference for us.
Awesome. I think that's some pretty sound advice, even for myself. As you look at collaborating with people on other opportunities and business ventures. So if that didn't help anybody else, it helped me out. So thanks. But you also, with the importance of taking care of clients and the transparency, one of the other things that you also shared with me when we first connected was something that was put together in house that you were going to actually be sharing with other enrolled agents
Mhm.
to help them in their practice. Do you want to, like I said, I don't know how much you want to share. Do you want to share what that is
Yeah.
and how it works?
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to. So, one of the kind of visions that we had in the group, so we brought experience together from both representation and then also in technology, in particular fintech, and commercializing fintech. And so, part of the vision was to leverage technology um, to support the representation that we are doing and to support client work. And so what we developed is an application called TaxRock. And what TaxRock does is automated IRS account monitoring. And so what it does is when it runs off of an 8821, so it's just an information authorization form that a taxpayer signs to give an enrolled agent or a firm authority to access their records. And when there's an 8821 on file, what TaxRock does is through an API with the IRS, downloads account transcripts every day. It parses through all of them, and it creates a dashboard account view of the IRS account. So it allows you to see in real time, if returns are filed or not, if when payments are made, tax, interest, penalty, and then probably the most important part of it is it picks up on the transaction codes. So, I think for those that don't know, on an account transcript, there's a separate account transcript for every tax period and every tax form. And every time the IRS takes action, there is a code that hits that transcript. And so what the system does is it picks up on those codes, and then it sends out alerts. And it really helps to be proactive, because there are activities on those account transcripts that happen before notices go out or before the IRS even takes action sometimes. And so it gets you ahead of that, but it's also very much a collaboration and a communication tool, because it gives the practitioner the account view, but it also gives the taxpayer the same exact view, and can provide the taxpayer with alerts as well. And so the benefit of that is the transparency that creates for taxpayers. The IRS is a black box. If you've got experience working with them, you know that well. That it's really hard to know exactly what's going on, and you can go download transcripts manually, or God forbid you have to call and sit on hold. It's a terrible experience, but and that's for professionals. For taxpayers, they do not know, what's going on, and it's extremely valuable for them to be able to understand what their situation is. And for EAs out there, I mean, I will tell you that people have a lot of anxiety when dealing with the IRS, and a lot of it is the unknown and not knowing where
Mhm.
they stand. And the IRS never just sends you a letter and says, "This is how much you owe," and this is what you can do about it. but the ability to be able to explain to a taxpayer in a way that they can understand where they stand provides just a lot of relief for them. So TaxRock is something that now we've made available for other practitioners as well.
Cool. So if somebody wanted to go check TaxRock out, I don't know if you are doing demos just to learn more
Uh,
about it. Where should they go to find out that information?
yeah, I'd be happy to talk to them about it. I could schedule a demo of it myself, so they can find me on LinkedIn. They can go to taxrock.com, just taxrock.com.
Okay. So I'll make sure that we have that in the show notes for sure as a clickable link so people can get right to it. But for those of you who are watching video on Spotify or watching on YouTube, time to actually look at your phone or device. We have Mike's LinkedIn name scrolling across the bottom, and then the TaxRock website is also up as well. And yeah, I think the you did a good job of explaining it. Sometimes when I talk about tax account monitoring, people are like, "Well, what is that, and like how can I charge for it?" And they don't understand the value of it. Kind of
Yes.
the same way people don't understand the value of their credential and all the authority that we have under Circular 230. And I'm like, if you can settle somebody's stomach before they get that envelope in the mail so they have that peace of mind and they know what's going on, people pay for that end result, the peace of mind.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. They certainly do. And when they feel like their position with the IRS is being managed for them, year round, it's extremely valuable to them. And so I talk to a lot of EAs that don't do representation, but they do account monitoring, for their clients. And, I think that that's something that a lot of EAs are trying to transition from being kind of seasonal tax prep to more year-round services, whether that's advisory services or fractionalized CFO services, or whatever that looks like for a lot of reasons, and that makes sense. But I think that one thing that transcript monitoring can help with a lot is the situation where an EA prepares a tax return, files it. They typically don't see the client until the next year unless a notice shows up, right? And then the notice shows up and it's for, the 1099 that the client didn't give the EA. The
Mm-hmm.
taxpayer's position is, well, you filed the return, it's kind of your job to fix this. The EA is like, well, you didn't give me the 1099, that's extra work that you're not paying for. And where that a lot of times ends up is either the EA does the work for free, right, and kind of resents it, or the taxpayer pays for the work and kind of resents it. But I think that a lot of firms just acknowledge that their clients expect that they're going to be managing their tax position throughout the year, and they incorporate transcript monitoring into that relationship for that reason.
Yes, that's a very practical example too of how to implement that in your practice if you are focused on compliance work. Because again, going back to that peace of mind, people will purchase audit protection if that means you already have a solution to whatever the IRS is sending out. I had a couple get a CP23 recently. For those of you not familiar, that means that the IRS documentation of estimated payments didn't match up with the return.
Mm-hmm.
Is it goofy? Yes, but it's the known IRS issue. What happened is the spouse went in and made the estimated tax payments and it didn't marry with the taxpayer, even though they file married filing jointly. So they immediately were like, hey, we got this. You already have a 2848 on file for us. Here's the confirmation of the payment. And it was a phone call, which was the hardest part, waiting on hold, right?
Yeah.
To have the
Yeah.
payment applied where it needed to be.
Yeah. 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 It's amazing how just one notice can take so much time to resolve in just a really simple thing. My father, I was helping him with get his taxes together, and had made an estimated tax payment to 2024 instead of 2025. Just
Oh,
inadvertently, just kind of logged in, and um, that was, he's convinced it was an IRS mistake, so I'll go with that.
yeah, we'll roll with that one. Well, Mike, I really do appreciate you taking the time to be here this evening and to share with us not just your story, but also about TaxRock. Because I know with the practical example that you gave with compliance and not even like people who are doing representation work yet, that has
Mhm.
definitely got some people's wheels turning for sure. So thank you.
Yeah.
Um, I did have one last question, unless
Mhm.
of course that opens the door for others. But in your journey, typically I ask as an EA, but I'll say in your journey in the tax representation world,
Yeah.
if there's anything that you could change, what would that be?
Um, I I I would have started being more active and networking, and as I mentioned, going to live training, right, much earlier
Mhm.
in my career. I think I did myself a real disservice by not, and missed out on just a ton of the benefit of that goes into that. Um, I I know I already kind of touched on that, but I guess as I think about it, that would be the biggest thing. I mean, I think that I could have moved my career ahead much faster had I started doing those things just earlier in my career.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. 'Cause like you said, you had good mentors, you had the training, but people don't believe me. There's a difference in going outside.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Well, and just the people you meet and the connections you make, and I also, I kind of limited my continuing education to just kind of representation, and then I wouldn't, if it was related to tax, I was like, whatever, I'm just going to kind of check the box on it. But what you don't realize is that, yeah, you don't have a passion around it, but just learning about other areas helps you connect dots. Like for example, tax credits for businesses, right? I would never submit one. I'm not going to prepare a return, but at least knowing what they are, knowing how they work, helps me to identify when I'm looking at a tax representation work or talking to a client, and they mention that the type of work they do might involve research. At least at that point, I can say, hey, why don't we have
Yeah, 100% agree. And again, I know I said it before, but thank you so much for being on here tonight. Um, do you have any last words before you go?
No. Well, no,
Anything I
thank you
missed?
very much for having me. And Timalyn, I'm a huge fan of the work that you're doing. And I'm really glad that we ran into each other. And I know that the folks that attend these podcasts are gaining a lot from this. So I'm just happy to be a part of it. Thank you very much.
You are welcome. And thank you again to the listeners. I hope you all have enjoyed tonight's episode. If you're new here, make sure that you go ahead and subscribe, whether you're on Spotify or, as I said earlier, our new YouTube home, the Enrolled Agent Hub, because last year we had 24 episodes come out. This year you'll have 26 new episodes. Not all of them will be with guests, but if I'm alone, it will always be a foundational training that will help you in growing your own firm. I will see you all next week at 8 p.m. Eastern, Sunday, for episode 31. Bye now.